The dirt road cutting through the forest on the outskirts of Judson Falls was deserted on that winter night. The sky, dotted with timid stars, witnessed the most difficult moment in Andrew Field's life. His uncertain steps left marks on the damp soil as he walked with difficulty, carrying against his chest 2 small bundles that moved gently. "Forgive me, my sons," he whispered, his voice breaking, tears flowing freely down his face, marked by fatigue. "I have no choice." The babies, newborn twins, seemed to take turns crying as if they understood the emotional turmoil that dominated their father. Andrew stopped abruptly in a wider stretch of the road where the moonlight created a silver circle on the ground. His hands trembled, not only from the cutting cold, but from the weight of the decision he had made. "It's to protect you," he justified, more to himself than to his sons. "They won't rest until they find you." Carefully, Andrew knelt and placed one of the boys on an improvised bed of dry leaves, wrapped in a blue blanket. For a few seconds, he held the other baby more tightly, as if his father's heart was fighting one last battle against the fate he had chosen for his children. "Michael," he murmured to the baby he still held. "Luke," he said to the one already on the ground. Simple names for children who he knew carried an extraordinary legacy. When he finally placed the second baby next to his brother, Andrew felt his body falter. He took a few steps back, breathing with difficulty, turned his back and disappeared among the trees, swallowed by the darkness of the forest. The babies were left alone, their cries echoing through the silent forest. Fate, however, had different plans for the brothers separated at birth. A deep sound cut through the silence, followed by the movement of nearby bushes. An imposing buffalo with dark fur emerged slowly from the forest, its amber eyes shining under the moonlight. The animal approached the babies with a tranquility that contrasted with its impressive size. The buffalo examined the children with almost human attention. It leaned over Michael and with surprising delicacy pushed him gently with its muzzle before carefully lifting the baby onto its back. It cast one last glance at Luke, who inexplicably stopped crying for a moment and returned to the forest, taking only one of the twins. Hours later, headlights illuminated the road. A retired couple of teachers, Helen and Robert Miller, were returning from visiting relatives when they spotted the small bundle abandoned. "Robert, stop the car!" Helen shouted, pointing to the roadside. "There's something there." Upon discovering the baby, the couple exchanged confused and concerned looks. Who would be capable of abandoning a child like this? Robert wondered, taking Luke in his arms. "We should take him to the police," Helen suggested, adjusting the blanket around the baby to protect him from the cold. "It's very late, and the nearest police station is miles from here," Robert considered. "Let's take him home tonight and decide what to do tomorrow." What they didn't imagine was that night would completely change the course of their lives. The decision to keep the baby, initially temporary, became permanent after weeks of bureaucracy and the absence of any information about biological parents or relatives. Far away, in the heart of the forest, Michael found a different fate. The buffalo carried him along secret trails to a small clearing where a modest wooden cabin sheltered John and Mary Oliver, a couple who lived in harmony with nature. When they heard the characteristic sound of the buffalo approaching, John and Mary came out to the porch of their cabin. Surprise took over their faces when they saw the baby on the animal's back. "Mary, look!" exclaimed John, running to pick up the child. "It's a miracle." Mary, who had always dreamed of being a mother, felt tears in her eyes as she took the little one in her arms. "Where did you come from, little one?" The buffalo remained motionless, as if waiting for confirmation that the child would be well, cared for. When Mary hugged the baby against her chest, the animal slowly moved away, disappearing again into the forest. "We've heard stories about the forest guardian," John commented quietly. "They say it chooses those who should be protected." "Let's call him Michael," decided Mary, observing a small wooden necklace in the shape of a buffalo hanging around the baby's neck. That night, 2 distinct homes welcomed the separated twins. While Luke would grow up in the city, surrounded by material comfort and formal education, Michael would be raised among ancient trees and crystal-clear rivers, learning the secrets of the forest and developing a special connection with nature. What no one could predict was that, despite the distance, An invisible bond would continue to unite the brothers, manifesting through dreams, inexplicable sensations, and coincidences that only time would reveal were not the work of chance. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. 15 years passed since that fateful night on the road. The twins, now teenagers, were leading completely different lives, unaware of each other's existence. Luke Miller grew up in Bellevue Heights in a comfortable apartment in the Savannah neighborhood. A dedicated student at the best private school in the city, he excelled in mathematics and physics Olympics. Despite the love dedicated by his adoptive parents, Helen and Robert, something inside him remained restless, like an unanswered question. "You seem distant today, son," Helen commented while serving breakfast. "Are you worried about the final exams?" Luke sighed, running his hand through his dark hair. "It's not that, Mom. I had that dream again." Helen and Robert exchanged concerned looks. For years, Luke had been reporting the same recurring dream: a dense forest, a large animal he couldn't clearly identify, and a feeling that someone was calling him. "They're just dreams, my son," Robert tried to reassure him. "Maybe we should consult Dr. Carmen again." Luke rolled his eyes, tired of the sessions with the psychologist who tried to explain his dreams through theories about abandonment trauma. "I don't need more therapy. This is different. It seems too real." That same morning, miles away, Michael Oliver woke up in the small cabin where he lived with John and Mary, in Shadow Valley, a preserved region of the Atlantic forest. The singing of birds and the murmur of the nearby river were his natural alarm clock. "Michael, breakfast is ready," Mary called from the rustic kitchen, where she prepared cassava bread in a wood-burning oven. The boy stretched and sat on the edge of the wooden bed. He instinctively touched the buffalo-shaped necklace he never took off. He had dreamed again of the strange boy who had his face. "You had that dream again, didn't you?" John asked, noticing his son's thoughtful expression as he sat at the table. Michael nodded, serving himself a glass of wild fruit juice. "More vivid than ever. It's as if he were trying to tell me something." John and Mary knew this moment would come. They had raised Michael with love and dedication, teaching him to respect and understand nature. From an early age, he demonstrated extraordinary abilities. He could predict weather changes, communicated uniquely with animals, and possessed an intuitive knowledge of the medicinal plants in the region. "I think it's time to tell you the whole truth," said John, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. "Truth about what?" Michael asked, confused. Mary took a deep breath. "About how you came to us, son. It wasn't by chance." That morning, Michael heard for the first time the complete story of how a majestic buffalo had brought him to the cabin, still a newborn. Although he knew he was adopted, he had never imagined the mystical circumstances that surrounded his arrival. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he questioned, feeling a mixture of fascination and confusion. "We were waiting for the right moment," John explained, "and we believe that moment has come. The dreams are a sign." "A sign of what?" "That it's time for you to meet the sanctuary of the Guardians," Mary replied with an enigmatic smile. Meanwhile, in Bellevue Heights, Luke was facing his own challenges. During physical education class, a severe headache suddenly struck him, making him fall to his knees on the sports court. "Luke, are you okay?" asked the teacher, supporting him. "I felt like something went through me," explained the young man, confused. "It was like a shock." At the exact moment Luke felt that inexplicable pain, miles away, Michael was touching the ancestral stone for the first time, a crystalline monolith located in the center of the sanctuary of the Guardians. The energy discharge that ran through his body upon contact with the stone was so intense that he almost fainted. "Extraordinary," commented Theodore, the elder master of the sanctuary, observing the phenomenon. "The stone has never reacted like this with any apprentice before." Claire, one of the leaders of the place, approached with interest. Tall, with black skin and grey hair, she carried the wisdom of generations. "He is not just a common guardian. He is one of the chosen ones." The sanctuary of the Guardians was hidden among mountains, accessible only by secret trails known to few. It was a place of training for people who, like Michael, possessed special connections with nature. There, ancient knowledge was preserved and transmitted, far from the eyes of the modern world. "What does it mean to be chosen?" Michael asked, still recovering from the intense experience. "It means you were born with a greater purpose," Claire explained. "And that purpose is linked to a balance that few understand." While Michael began his journey of self-discovery at the sanctuary, Luke began to question more intensely his origins. After the episode at school, he convinced his parents to tell him more details about his abandonment. "We only know that you were found alone by the side of that road," Helen explained, showing him the blue blanket he was wrapped in when they found him. "There was no identification, no clue about your biological parents." "And this cord?" Luke asked, holding a small wooden pendant in the shape of half a circle that was kept with the blanket. "It was around your neck," Robert replied. "It seemed broken, as if it were part of something larger." Luke examined the object with curiosity. For some inexplicable reason, he felt that that simple piece of wood was important, a key to unraveling the mystery that surrounded him. That night, both Luke and Michael observed the full moon through their windows, one feeling the emptiness of something he didn't know, the other beginning to understand the magnitude of what he was about to discover. What neither of them imagined was that destiny had already begun to weave the threads that would eventually bring them together, revealing truths that would change their lives forever. The first rays of sun penetrated timidly through the windows of Michael's room at the Sanctuary of the Guardians. It had been 3 months since the young man had begun his training, and each day brought new discoveries about his abilities and about the mysterious world that existed parallel to everyday reality. "Focus on the Earth's energy," Theodore instructed. As they walked barefoot on the damp grass of dawn, "Feel the pulse of life beneath your feet." Michael closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Gradually, he began to perceive subtle vibrations rising up his legs, radiating throughout his body. A sensation of warmth spread through his chest, concentrating at the exact point where he carried the buffalo necklace. "It's working," he exclaimed in surprise, when small bluish lights began to dance around his extended fingers. Theodore smiled, satisfied. "Your progress is impressive, Michael. Most apprentices take years to manifest the elemental light." Claire, who was observing the practice a few meters away, approached with a serious expression. "His gift is natural, not learned. It's as if it had always existed within him." The three walked toward the center of the sanctuary, where other apprentices practiced different skills under the supervision of more experienced masters. The place was an oasis of ancient architecture and exuberant nature, stone constructions, covered with vines integrated harmoniously with centennial trees, forming a circular complex around the ancestral stone. "Today you will attempt a deeper connection," announced Claire, leading Michael to a small isolated chamber where crystalline water sprang directly from the rock, forming a natural mirror on the polished stone floor. "The mirror of truth," explained Theodore. "It can reveal fragments of your past and, for some, glimpses of what is to come." Michael hesitated. "What if I'm not ready to see?" "No one is ever fully ready," Claire replied gently. "But the visions only show what we need to know at the right time." Alone in the chamber, Michael knelt before the water mirror and focused his attention on the calm surface. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, when he was about to give up, the water began to ripple slightly, and images appeared like distorted reflections. The first vision showed a man, Andrew, his biological father, walking down the dark road with 2 babies in his arms. Michael felt a knot in his throat as he witnessed the moment he was separated from his brother. The scene dissolved, then showing a teenager in an urban room looking at a broken wooden amulet. "Luke," whispered Michael, instinctively knowing that was his twin's name. Meanwhile, in Bellevue Heights, Luke woke up startled. He had dreamed of a strange place, full of ancient stones and people dressed in simple clothes practicing what seemed to be rituals. In the center of the dream, a boy identical to him was looking into a pool of water. "Michael," he murmured, sitting up in bed. It was the first time a name had appeared in his dreams. Determined to understand what it meant, Luke retrieved from his wardrobe a box where he kept the wooden amulet and the blue blanket from his abandonment. He examined the object again, noticing details he had never noticed before. Small symbols, engraved on the edges, almost imperceptible. I need to find out more, he decided, turning on his computer and beginning a search on ancient Brazilian symbols and legends involving buffaloes. In the following weeks, Luke immersed himself in an obsessive investigation. He visited libraries, contacted anthropologists, and researched online forums about American mythology. A local university history professor, Dr. Cecilia Fontaine, an expert in indigenous beliefs, was particularly interested in his amulet. These symbols are very similar to those used by the forest guardians, she explained, examining the object with a magnifying glass. An almost mythical group that supposedly protects sacred areas of nature. Do they really exist? Luke asked, anxious. There are reports of isolated communities in the mountains of the northeast, replied Cecilia, but no one has been able to document their existence concretely. They're like ghosts for anthropology. The conversation with the professor ignited something in Luke. Determined to find answers, he began to plan a trip to the region mentioned by her. His adoptive parents, concerned about his growing obsession, tried to dissuade him. It's a meaningless search, Luke, Robert argued during a tense dinner. You're building fantasies based on coincidences and dreams. They're more than coincidences, protested the young man. You don't understand what I feel. It's as if a part of me were lost, waiting to be found. Helen, always more sensitive to her son's emotional needs, intervened. Perhaps this trip is necessary for your inner peace, but you won't go alone. At the Sanctuary of the Guardians, Michael continued his intensive training. His abilities were growing exponentially, but along with them came increasingly frequent visions of his brother. During a meditation session, he felt a sharp pain in his chest that made him fall to his knees. He's coming, he said with labored breathing. Luke is looking for me. Claire and Theodore exchanged concerned looks. The meeting of the twins had always been in the ancient prophecies, but no one knew for sure what the consequences would be. The bond between you is strengthening, Claire explained, and that can be both a blessing and a risk. Why? Questioned Michael, confused. Because you are two sides of the same coin, replied Theodore, one raised in nature, the other in the city. One in harmony with the elements, the other shaped by logic and technology. The balance between you defines more than your own lives. That night, during a special ceremony at the sanctuary, the great buffalo appeared again. It was rare to see it since Michael had arrived at the place, but now the animal approached the center of the ceremonial circle, its amber eyes fixed on the young man. The guardian recognizes the proximity of the moment, Theodore whispered to Claire. The paths of the brothers are about to cross. The buffalo walked slowly to Michael and slightly inclined its head, as if in invitation. With his heart racing, the young man extended his hand and touched the forehead of the imposing animal. At the moment of contact, a clear vision appeared in his mind. Luke, accompanied by his adoptive parents in a car, following the same road where the babies had been left 15 years before. He arrives in 3 days, announced Michael, withdrawing, his hand and looking at the masters. We need to be prepared. At the same moment, hundreds of miles away, Luke contemplated the night through the window of the hotel room where he had stopped with his parents. He held the wooden amulet, which strangely seemed warmer than normal. An inexplicable certainty took hold of him. I'm coming, Michael, he whispered to himself. Whoever you are. Robert's old VW van advanced slowly along the dirt road that snaked between verdant mountains. Luke repeatedly consulted the improvised map he had created, based on his research and the information from Dr. Cecilia. Are you sure it's this way? Asked Helen, observing the increasingly dense forest around them. I haven't seen any sign or indication for miles. We're on the right track, stated Luke with a conviction that even he couldn't explain. His amulet hanging around his neck seemed to vibrate subtly as they approached their destination. Robert braked suddenly when a huge fallen trunk blocked the road. Looks like the road ends here, he said, turning off the engine. Luke got out of the vehicle and examined the obstacle. Something about that trunk didn't seem natural. It was positioned almost perpendicular to the road, as if it had been deliberately placed there. I think we'll have to continue on foot, he suggested, adjusting the backpack on his back. Luke, it's getting dark. protested Helen. "It would be unwise to enter the forest now." While they were discussing, a sound of breaking branches caught their attention. A figure emerged from the forest, an elderly man with sun-tanned skin and long grey hair tied in a bun. He wore simple clothes of raw cotton and carried a staff of carved wood. "Looking for the sanctuary?" he asked directly, his shrewd eyes studying the visitors. Luke felt a shiver run down his spine. "How do you know?" The old man smiled enigmatically. "The amulet you carry. Only those who have a bond with the Guardians find this path." Robert took a step forward, protective. "Who are you?" "My name is Anthony. I'm one of the external guides of the Sanctuary of the Guardians," he explained calmly. "We've been expecting you." The expression of surprise on Luke's face was evident. "What do you mean, expecting us?" "Some arrivals are foreseen long before." "They happen," answered Anthony, gesturing for them to follow him, "especially when they involve the children of prophecy." Reluctant but intrigued, Helen and Robert agreed to follow the guide. Anthony led them along an almost invisible trail that wound among centennial trees. After about an hour of walking, the group reached a clearing where a small rustic cabin stood. "We'll spend the night here," informed Anthony. "Tomorrow morning we'll continue to the sanctuary. The first journey must be made under the light of the sun." Miles away in the heart of the Sanctuary of the Guardians, Michael couldn't sleep. He felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement with the proximity of the meeting. Claire found him sitting next to the ancestral stone, observing the starry sky. "The stars are aligned," she commented, sitting beside him. "It's a good omen for the reunion." "I have so many questions," confessed Michael, emotional. "Why were we separated? Who is our biological father? Why did the buffalo choose me and not Luke?" Claire sighed deeply. "Not all questions will have immediate answers, Michael. Some truths only reveal themselves when we are ready to understand them." "What if he rejects me?" questioned the young man, verbalizing his greatest fear. "What if he doesn't feel the same connection I feel?" "The bond between twins transcends time and distance," Claire replied with serenity. "Your connection was forged even before birth. Nothing can completely break it." The following dawn, Luke awoke from a sleep populated by intense dreams. He had clearly seen the place they were going to, a set of ancient constructions integrated with nature, centered around a large, brilliant stone. Anthony guided them for the rest of the way, which gradually became steeper. The vegetation changed subtly, presenting species that Luke had never seen in his biology books. Flowers of vibrant colors exhaled intoxicating perfumes, and the sounds of the forest seemed to form a harmonious melody. "We are entering sacred territory," explained Anthony. "Nature here responds to different energies from those you know." After circumventing a particularly impressive rock formation, the group finally spotted the Sanctuary of the Guardians. Helen and Robert were amazed at the vision. Ancient structures that seemed to sprout organically from the mountains, interconnected by wooden bridges and surrounded by lush gardens. "It's exactly as I saw in my dreams," murmured Luke, feeling the amulet on his chest heat up considerably. At the main entrance of the sanctuary, a reception committee awaited them. Theodore was at the front, flanked by Claire and other masters. Michael, however, was not among them. "Welcome to the Sanctuary of the Guardians," greeted Theodore with a formal reverence. "Your journey here was not by chance." Luke could barely pay attention to the welcome words. His eyes anxiously scanned the place, looking for the face he knew only from his dreams. "Where is he?" he asked directly, interrupting Theodore. "Where is Michael?" A momentary silence hung over the group, broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Luke turned slowly and finally saw him. It was like looking in a mirror, except for the simple cotton clothes and the buffalo necklace that the other wore. Michael stopped a few meters away, equally impacted by the encounter. The two young men stared at each other in absolute silence, while everyone around seemed to hold their breath. "Finally," said Michael, his voice choked with emotion. Luke took a step forward, instinctively bringing his hand to his broken amulet. Michael made the same movement, touching his buffalo necklace. When they were just an arm's length apart, something extraordinary happened. Luke's amulet began to shine intensely, emitting a bluish light that connected to Michael's necklace, forming a luminous beam between the brothers. "What's happening?" asked Helen, frightened by the phenomenon. The reconnection, explained Claire with reverence, the first step to restore the balance. The twins, as if driven by a force greater than their will, took the last step and embraced. At the exact moment of contact, a wave of energy pulsed from them, spreading in concentric circles throughout the sanctuary. "I've been looking for you for so long," whispered Luke. "I always knew you would come," Michael replied. Theodore approached the reunited brothers. "This is just the beginning. Your true journey is about to begin." Robert and Helen observed the scene with a mixture of amazement and concern. They clearly perceived that their son was entering a world they would never fully understand. "What exactly is happening here?" questioned Robert, trying to maintain his composure. "An ancient prophecy is being fulfilled," replied Theodore, turning to Luke's adoptive parents. "And you are also part of it, even without knowing. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. Will continue. The council chamber of the Guardians was illuminated by dozens of torches that projected dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. Around a circular table engraved with mysterious symbols sat the twins, their respective adoptive parents, and the masters of the sanctuary. "It's time to know the whole truth," announced Theodore, placing on the table a book with a cover worn by time. "The story that unites you began long before your birth." Luke and Michael exchanged glances. Since their reunion a few hours before, they had barely separated, as if trying to make up for the 15 lost years. "Our biological father," Luke began. "Who was he really?" Claire opened the book on a page marked with a red cord. Andrew Fields was not an ordinary man. He descended from an ancient lineage of guardians, although he chose to live in the outside world. "Why did he abandon us?" asked Michael, the pain evident in his voice. "To protect you," replied Theodore. "Andrew discovered something he shouldn't have, a secret guarded for centuries." Theodore explained that Andrew was a researcher of ancestral knowledge who had fallen in love with Helen Santos, a university scientist. Together, they discovered the location of a powerful artifact, the Guardian Crystal, a stone that, according to legends, maintained the balance between the natural world and the human world. The crystal was fragmented centuries ago, and its pieces hidden to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands, continued Claire. Andrew and Helen found one of the fragments and began to study it. "My biological mother," murmured Michael. "What happened to her?" A heavy silence hung in the room. It was John, Michael's adoptive father, who finally answered. "Helen disappeared shortly before your birth. Andrew suspected she had been captured by those seeking the crystal." "The Shadow Circle," completed Theodore. "A group that believes the power of the crystal should be used to dominate nature, not to live in harmony with it." Robert, who had been listening to everything with a skeptical expression, interrupted. "This all sounds like too fantastic a story. Magic crystals, secret sects. How do you expect us to believe?" In response, Claire raised her hand, and a small sphere of bluish light formed above her palm, illuminating the room with a supernatural glow. Helen Miller stifled a cry of surprise. "What you call magic is just a science that modern humanity has forgotten," explained Claire with serenity. "The Guardians have preserved this knowledge for millennia." The demonstration seemed to momentarily silence Robert's doubts. Theodore continued the narrative, revealing that Andrew, fearing for the safety of his newborn sons, decided to separate them. He knew that the Shadow Circle would be looking for twin children born during the celestial alignment, explained the Master. "An ancient prophecy speaks of brothers who carry in their blood the power to reunite the fragments of the crystal. So he abandoned us. To save us?" questioned Luke, trying to process the information. "Yes," confirmed Claire. "And the buffalo, the forest guardian spirit, intervened. It chose Michael to be raised in the heart of nature, developing his connection with the elements." "And I was left behind," concluded Luke, a touch of bitterness in his voice. "Not by chance," added Theodore. "You grew up in the modern world, developing analytical skills and knowledge that will be equally important for what is to come." Michael extended his hand and held his brother's. "We are two parts of a whole, different but complementary." John and Mary exchanged concerned looks before John asked, "And Andrew, what happened to him after that night?" Claire closed the book with a heavy sigh. Andrew continued his search for the other fragments of the crystal and for clues about Helen's whereabouts. He kept hidden, always one step ahead of the shadow circle. "Until 3 years ago," completed Theodore, "when we lost contact with him." The revelation fell like a bomb on the twins. Michael stood up abruptly, his face a mask of anguish. "So he might be—" "We don't know," Claire quickly interrupted. "Andrew was extremely skilled. There are many reasons why he might have interrupted." "Communication." Luke, always more pragmatic, questioned, "And what does all this have to do with us now? What do you expect us to do?" Theodore exchanged glances with the other masters before answering, "The shadow circle is more active than ever. We feel disturbances in the energy flows of the Earth. We believe they are about to find another fragment of the crystal. And you need us to stop them," concluded Michael. "Not just that," corrected Claire. "We need you to complete the work your parents began. Reunite the fragments and restore the balance." Robert stood up, indignant. "This is madness. Luke is just a teenager. I won't allow him to get involved in something so dangerous." Helen placed a reassuring hand on her husband's arm. "Robert, look at him. See how he interacts with his brother. I've never seen him so complete." Indeed, despite the disturbing revelations, Luke seemed transformed. The restlessness that had always accompanied him had given way to a serene determination. "I'm not asking for permission," he said to his adoptive parents gently. "All my life, I felt something was missing. Now I know what." Mary, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "How will they face this shadow circle? They're just boys." In response, Theodore stood up and made a solemn gesture. The wall behind him slid, revealing a secret chamber. In the center, on a crystal pedestal, rested a small, brilliant fragment, no larger than a coin. "This is the fragment that Andrew entrusted to us before disappearing," he explained. "And it can only be activated by the blood of the united twins." Michael and Luke approached the fragment, fascinated by its hypnotic glow. When they were a few steps from the pedestal, Luke's amulet and Michael's necklace began to shine again. "Your talismans are the keys," explained Claire. "Michael carries the Guardian, representing the force of nature. Luke possesses the Seeker, symbolizing knowledge and journey. Together they form the link," completed Theodore, "the symbol of the union between worlds." At that moment, a distant boom shook the sanctuary. Dust fell from the ceiling while objects trembled on the shelves. "What was that?" asked Helen, frightened. Theodore's face hardened. "They found us. The shadow circle is here." The sanctuary transformed into a scene of urgency and movement. Guardians ran in all directions, preparing defenses and evacuating the youngest to protected areas in the underground caves. "How did they find us so quickly?" questioned Claire as she led the group down the stone corridor that led to a strategy room. "The twins' reunion," replied Theodore, his face marked by concern. "The energy released was like a beacon for those who know how to detect it." Michael and Luke exchanged guilty looks. John and Mary held on tightly, while Robert maintained a protective arm around Helen. Upon reaching the strategy room, Theodore activated a mechanism that revealed a three-dimensional map of the sanctuary and its surroundings. Small red dots moved in the direction of the complex. "At least 12 invaders," analyzed one of the most experienced Guardians, a middle-aged man named Raphael. "They're using the North Valley as an access route." "Have the external protection portals already been activated?" asked Claire. "Yes, but they won't hold them back for long," replied Raphael. "They have advanced technology combined with ancestral knowledge, a dangerous mixture." Theodore turned to the twins. "We need to get you out of here. The crystal fragment too." "Flee," protested Michael, indignant. "We can't abandon the sanctuary." "It's not a flight, it's a strategy," corrected Claire. "You are the main target. If you remain here, you put everyone at risk." Luke, always more analytical, understood the logic. "Where will we go?" "To the Valley of Springs," replied Theodore. "There is a hidden temple in the underground caves, protected by natural barriers and ancient enchantments." Robert intervened, his voice firm. "Helen and I will go with Luke. We won't leave him alone in this. We'll also accompany Michael. affirmed John, with Mary nodding vigorously at his side. Theodore hesitated, but Claire placed her hand on his shoulder. They have the right. Their family. While they were preparing to leave, another tremor, more intense than the previous one, shook the structures of the sanctuary. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the corridors. "They're forcing the east entrance," alerted Raphael, consulting the map. "We need to hurry." Michael approached the window and observed a column of smoke rising on the horizon. His heart ached at the thought of the sanctuary, his home for months, under attack. "Who exactly are these people?" asked Luke, joining his brother. "The Shadow. Circle began as a dissident of the Guardians themselves," explained Claire, who supervised the preparation of backpacks with essential supplies. They believed that ancestral knowledge should be used to dominate nature, not to live in harmony with it. Over time, they transformed into a powerful organization that operates in the shadows, completed Theodore. They infiltrate governments, corporations, scientific institutions. Their ultimate goal is to gain absolute control over natural resources using the power of the Guardian Crystal. A young Guardian entered the room running. "Master Theodore, they've broken through the first perimeter. We have less than 20 minutes before they reach the core of the sanctuary." "We're ready," declared Raphael, handing the Master a leather case that contained the crystal fragment. Theodore turned to the twins. "Michael, you know the secret trails. Luke, trust your brother. Claire will go with you to the meeting point, where Anna will be waiting to guide you for the rest of the way." "And you?" asked Michael, concerned. "I will stay behind with the other masters," replied Theodore with serenity. "We will ensure that the circle doesn't follow you." The group prepared to leave. Claire led, followed by the twins and their respective families. They used a secret passage that began behind an ancient tapestry and spiraled down to the lower levels of the sanctuary. "This tunnel was built by the first Guardians, more than 1,000 years ago," explained Claire as they walked quickly. "It connects to a network of natural caves that runs throughout the mountain. The path was narrow and humid, illuminated only by small crystals encrusted in the walls that emitted a bluish glow. Robert and Helen, accustomed to urban comfort, were having difficulties keeping up the pace, but they didn't complain. After almost half an hour of walking, they reached a wider cave where an underground stream flowed silently. Claire signaled for them to stop. "Rest a bit. We'll drink water," and continue shortly. While the others recovered, Michael moved away a little, feeling something strange in the environment. Luke noticed his brother's behavior and approached. "What is it?" "I'm not entirely sure," replied Michael, frowning. "I feel a presence. Different." At that moment, his buffalo necklace began to emit a slight glow. Luke felt his amulet react in the same way. The two objects pulsed in synchrony, like heartbeats. A sound of hooves echoed through the cave. Everyone froze. From the darkness of a lateral tunnel emerged the majestic buffalo, its amber eyes shining intensely in the shadows. "The Forest Guardian," murmured Claire, reverent. The animal approached the twins slowly, observing them with an intelligence that transcended common nature. It slightly inclined its head towards a passage that no one had noticed before. "It's showing us another way," concluded Michael. "Can we trust it?" asked Robert, distrustful. "It was this buffalo that brought Michael to us that night," replied John. "If it weren't for this buffalo, the twins would never have reunited." Claire studied the new tunnel for a few moments. "This passage is not on our maps. It must be very ancient." "Or very new," suggested Luke. "Perhaps it was opened recently by some natural event." The decision was unanimous. They would follow the buffalo. The animal advanced through the unknown tunnel, its massive body barely fitting in the passage at some points. The group followed it in single file, trusting its guidance. The new path went up instead of down, circumventing the interior of the mountain in an ascending spiral. After an hour of walking, they began to feel a fresh breeze. They were approaching the surface. The tunnel ended abruptly in a small opening between rocks, camouflaged by dense bushes. The buffalo stopped and looked back, as if waiting for everyone to exit. Michael was the first to emerge, followed by Luke. When everyone had left the tunnel, they found themselves on an elevated plateau that offered a panoramic view of the region. In the distance, they could see smoke rising from the sanctuary. "The masters," murmured Michael, anguished. Claire placed her hand on his shoulder. "They know what they're doing, Michael. The priority now is to protect you and the fragment." The buffalo moved again, calling the group's attention. It pointed with its muzzle towards the horizon, where a chain of mountains rose imposingly. "The Valley of Springs lies beyond those mountains," explained Claire. "It will take us at least 2 days to get there." The buffalo snorted and shook its head as if disagreeing. It approached Michael and lowered itself slightly in a clear invitation. "It wants me to mount," understood the young man, surprised. "Impossible," protested Mary. "It's too dangerous." Luke, however, had already approached the animal. "It's not just Michael. It wants to take both of us." Claire observed the scene with amazement. "In all my years as a guardian, I have never seen the forest spirit offer itself as a mount." Michael exchanged a look with Luke, and both understood. This was another step in the fulfillment of the prophecy. Without hesitation, the twins mounted on the back of the imposing buffalo. "What do we do now?" asked Robert, concerned to see the young men on the animal. Claire handed Luke the case with the crystal fragment. "Go to the Valley of Springs. Anna will be waiting at the entrance of the ancestral caves. We will follow by land and meet you there." "But," began Helen, interrupted by the sudden movement of the buffalo. The animal turned around and, with impressive speed for its size, shot down the mountain, carrying the twins on its back. In a few seconds they had disappeared among the trees. The wind whipped the faces of Michael and Luke as the buffalo galloped along invisible trails in the dense forest. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky with orange and purple hues that filtered through the canopies of the centennial trees. "This is unbelievable!" shouted Luke, holding firmly to the thick fur of the animal. A week before, he had been worried about school exams in Bellevue Heights, and now he was riding a mystical buffalo alongside the twin brother he had just met. Michael smiled, more accustomed to the connection with the animal. "He knows the way better than any of us. Trust him." The buffalo maintained a constant rhythm, skillfully avoiding obstacles and choosing passages that seemed impossible for an animal of that size. As they advanced, the vegetation subtly changed. Older trees appeared, covered with luminescent moss, and rare flowers bloomed along the way, as if greeting the twins' passage. When night fell completely, the buffalo finally slowed its pace, entering a small circular clearing where a natural spring bubbled between rocks covered with ancient symbols. "I think we'll camp here," said Michael, sliding from the animal's back. He extended his hand to help Luke descend. "Are you okay?" Luke nodded, rubbing his legs sore from the ride. "Just a little out of my comfort zone." The buffalo walked to the spring and drank water before moving away to graze peacefully at the edge of the clearing, as if standing guard. Michael, accustomed to life in nature, quickly organized a simple shelter with branches and large leaves. Luke observed, amazed at his brother's skill. "How did you learn all this?" "John and Mary taught me since I was little," replied Michael, lighting a small fire with primitive techniques. "And later at the sanctuary I refined that knowledge." The brothers sat by the fire, sharing the provisions that Claire had placed in the backpacks. The silence of the forest was occasionally broken by the song of nocturnal birds and the soft murmur of the spring. "It's still hard to process all this," confessed Luke, looking at the starry sky visible between the trees. "A week ago, I was just an ordinary student with strange dreams." Michael smiled, understanding. "And now you've discovered that you're part of an ancient prophecy, have latent powers, and a twin brother who was raised by a magical buffalo." The two laughed, momentarily relieving the tension of the last few days. "What was our mother like?" Luke suddenly asked. "Did anyone tell you anything about her?" Michael sighed, stirring the embers with a twig. "Not much. I know she was a scientist, brilliant from what they say. Theodore mentioned that she had a special connection with the elements, just like us." Luke removed from his backpack the small leather case that contained the crystal fragment. "Could she still be alive, looking for us somewhere?" "I want to believe so," replied Michael, instinctively touching his buffalo necklace. "I feel there's much more to this story than they've told us so far." The case in his hands emitted a slight glow, responding to the proximity of the twins. Luke opened it carefully, revealing the crystalline fragment that glowed with its own light, pulsing like a small heart. "It's strange," commented Luke, observing the fragment. "I feel as if I already knew it, as if it were part of me." Michael extended his hand, hesitant. "May I?" When the two touched the fragment simultaneously, a wave of energy ran through their bodies. Shared visions flooded their minds. A dark-haired woman smiling while writing complex formulas on a board. A man, their father, examining ancient maps by candlelight. A laboratory hidden in the mountains. And finally, the complete crystal, shining intensely in the center of a circular temple. The twins withdrew their hands at the same time, breathless. "Did you see that?" asked Luke, still dazed. Michael nodded, his eyes wide. "Those were our parents, and we saw the complete crystal." "And that place at the end," continued Luke, "looked like an ancient temple?" "The Temple of Convergences," said a female voice, startling the brothers. From the darkness of the forest emerged a slender figure. She was a young woman, with tan skin and black hair braided with colorful feathers. She was dressed simply, but wore around her neck an amulet similar to Michael's. "Who are you?" asked Luke, instinctively assuming a defensive position. "My name is Anna," she replied with a tranquil smile. "I am the guardian of the Valley of Springs. Claire warned me you were on your way, but I didn't expect to see you so soon." Michael relaxed, recognizing the name mentioned by Theodore. "The buffalo brought us by a faster path." Anna approached and made a respectful reverence to the majestic animal, which responded with a movement of its head. "The forest spirit chose to guide you personally," she observed with admiration. "This hasn't happened for generations." Anna joined the brothers by the fire, accepting some of the food they offered. While they ate, she explained that the Valley of Springs was one of the most sacred places for the Guardians, where various sources of pure water emerged from the earth, creating a unique and powerful ecosystem. "The temple you saw in the vision is in the heart of the valley," continued Anna. "It was built millennia ago at the exact point where the Earth's energy currents cross." "That's where the crystal must be reunited," concluded Michael. Anna nodded. "According to the prophecies, only the twins born under the celestial alignment can restore the lost balance." Luke frowned. "But other fragments are still missing. How will we find them?" "The fragment you possess will guide you," replied Anna. "Each part of the crystal resonates with the others, no matter the distance." While they talked, they didn't notice a small creature observing them from the shadows. It was a hummingbird of unusual coloration, metallic blue with golden details, that hovered motionless in an unnatural way. The next morning, the three were awakened by the buffalo, which seemed agitated. "Something is wrong," murmured Anna, getting up quickly. They didn't have to wait long to discover the reason for the animal's uneasiness. A mechanical buzzing filled the air, and small surveillance drones emerged among the trees, equipped with cameras and sensors. "The Shadow Circle!" exclaimed Michael. "But how did they find us so quickly?" Anna pointed to one of the drones. "Energy tracking technology. They can detect the crystal fragment." Luke acted quickly, storing the case in the backpack and throwing dirt on the fire. "We need to move." "The Valley of Springs is less than an hour from here," informed Anna. "There will be protected by natural barriers and ancestral enchantments." Without wasting time, they mounted the buffalo again. Anna sat in front, guiding the animal on a different path from the one they had followed until then. The drones tried to follow them, but the buffalo was surprisingly agile, zigzagging between dense trees where the devices had difficulty maintaining course. As they advanced, the forest became increasingly exuberant. Giant trees with trunks as wide as houses formed a natural cathedral. The air became charged with moisture and energy. "We're getting close," announced Anna. "Feel the change in the atmosphere." Indeed, something was subtly changing around them. The colors seemed more vibrant, the sounds clearer. Luke, even without his brother's training, could feel the vibrant energy emanating from the ground. Suddenly, the buffalo stopped in front of a wall of dense mist that seemed to appear from nowhere, marking an invisible border. "The valley's veil," explained Anna. "The first protection. Only those with guardian blood or invited by one can cross it." "And the drones?" asked Luke, looking back. Modern technology fails when trying to penetrate the veil, she replied with a confident smile. Anna murmured words in an ancient language and made a gesture with her hand. The mist undulated, opening a temporary passage. The buffalo advanced without hesitation, transporting the three through the barrier. The world that revealed itself on the other side took the twins' breath away. An extensive and verdant valley opened before them, cut by dozens of crystalline streams that converged toward a central lake. Flowers of species never before seen by the brothers bloomed in cascades of vibrant colors, and millennial trees rose majestically, forming natural domes over perfectly circular clearings. "Welcome to the Valley of Springs," announced Anna, dismounting from the buffalo. One of the last truly pure sanctuaries in the world. In the center of the valley rose an ancient structure that seemed to merge organically with the environment. It was the temple they had glimpsed in their shared vision. A perfect circle of white stones, with elegant arches supporting a semi-transparent domed roof that shone under the sunlight. "It's the Temple of Convergences," murmured Michael. Marveled. "Exactly as we saw in the vision," agreed Luke. The buffalo led them along a path paved with flat stones that wound among the streams. As they approached the temple, figures began to emerge from different points of the valley. They were the guardians who inhabited the place, dressed in simple clothes in earthy tones, each carrying distinct symbols and amulets that denoted their specific functions. "They were expecting you," explained Anna. "The news of the reunion of the prophecy twins spread quickly among our people." Luke observed everything with analytical eyes, absorbing each detail. "How many people live here?" "About 200, replied Anna. "Guardians, apprentices, sages. Some spend their entire lives here, others come only for training or in times of need." Upon reaching the entrance of the temple, they were received by an elderly man whose wrinkled face displayed enviable serenity. His eyes, however, shone with a youthful energy. "Welcome, sons of Andrew and Helen," he greeted with a melodious voice. "I am Bartholomew, chief guardian of the Temple of Convergences." The twins dismounted and made a respectful reverence, imitating Anna's gesture. The buffalo snorted softly and moved away, heading toward a nearby grove where other animals rested, deer, wolves, and even a mountain lion, all coexisting in an improbable harmony. "The animals here seem different," observed Luke, "more conscious." "The valley amplifies the connection between all forms of life," explained Bartholomew. "Here, the barrier between human and natural dissolves." They were led to the interior of the temple, an impressive circular space. The domed ceiling was made of a crystalline material that filtered the sunlight in hypnotic patterns that danced across the marble floor. In the exact center, an octagonal pedestal rose, with carvings. "That seemed made to receive something specific." "That is where the complete crystal must rest," said Bartholomew, following the twins' gaze. "When all the parts are reunited." Luke removed the case from his backpack and opened it, revealing the fragment they were transporting. Under the special light of the temple, the crystal pulsed with renewed energy, emitting a bluish glow that projected complex shadows on the walls. "How long has it been separated?" he asked. "Centuries," replied Bartholomew. "The Guardian crystal was fragmented during the Great Divergence, when a group of Guardians deviated from the path of harmony and sought power to dominate instead of protect." "The Shadow Circle," concluded Michael. Bartholomew nodded gravely. "They were Guardians once, until they were corrupted by greed. The sages of that time realized that the whole crystal was too dangerous, so they divided it into 7 fragments, hiding them in different regions of the world, protected by chosen Guardians." Anna, who had left the group momentarily, returned with a concerned expression. "Claire sent a message," she announced. "They were intercepted on the way. Robert is injured, but they managed to escape. They are sheltering in Cedar Village, 2 days from here." "We need to help them," exclaimed Michael, alarmed. "And we will," assured Bartholomew. "But first, you need to fully understand your role in this story. Time is running out." The elderly man led them to an adjacent chamber, where an ancient mural covered the entire circular wall. It was a detailed representation of the prophecy, showing 2 identical babies being separated, growing in different worlds, and finally reuniting to restore the lost balance. Your parents deciphered crucial parts of this mystery, explained Bartholomew, indicating specific symbols on the mural. Andrew discovered the location of 3 fragments. One of them is the one you brought. And the other 2? Questioned Luke. One is safe, guarded by distant allies. The other... Bartholomew hesitated. We believe your mother found it before disappearing. Michael felt a chill down his spine. So she really is alive. We cannot affirm with certainty, replied Bartholomew cautiously, but there are indications, signs that only someone with profound knowledge of the ancient paths could leave. At that moment, a distant boom echoed through the valley, followed by cries of alarm. Anna ran to the entrance of the temple, returning seconds later with a grave expression. They've surpassed the veil. The shadow circle has found a way to penetrate our defenses. Bartholomew paled. Impossible. The barriers are impenetrable for modern technology. They're not using only technology, replied Anna. They have a guide, someone with guardian blood. The twins exchanged glances, understanding the gravity of the situation. The Valley of Springs, the last truly safe refuge, was under attack. How much time do we have? Asked Michael. Minutes, perhaps, replied Anna. They're advancing rapidly along the north path. Bartholomew made a quick decision. Anna, take the twins to the Chamber of the Depths. There they can access the passage to the submerged temple. But what about the fragment? Questioned Luke. Take it with you, instructed the chief guardian. You are the only ones who can adequately protect it now. While Anna guided the brothers to a lateral exit of the temple, Bartholomew gathered the other guardians to organize the defense of the valley. Michael cast a last look behind, seeing the elderly man raising his hands and invoking a luminous barrier that enveloped the temple. Will he be okay? He asked Anna as they ran. Bartholomew is more powerful than he appears, she replied, but even he has limits against a coordinated attack. They traversed exuberant gardens and small bridges over crystalline streams, finally reaching a grotto partially hidden by a waterfall. Anna murmured ancient words and made a gesture with her hands, revealing an opening in the rocky wall that would be impossible to detect without prior knowledge. The Chamber of the Depths awaits you, she said, handing Michael a small, luminous crystal. This guide will illuminate the path. Always follow the blue marks on the walls. You're not coming with us? Asked Luke, surprised. Anna shook her head. My place is here, defending the valley. You must continue alone now. Where exactly are we going? Questioned Michael. To the place where everything began, replied Anna enigmatically. The cradle of the Guardian's lineage. There you will find the next fragment, and perhaps answers about your mother. The twins hesitated, reluctant to abandon more people who were risking themselves to protect them. At that moment, a familiar roar echoed through the cave. The great buffalo had returned, positioning itself at the entrance of the secret passage. It seems you won't be completely alone, observed Anna with a smile. The forest spirit has chosen to accompany you to the end of the journey. The secret passage revealed itself to be a labyrinth of underground tunnels that deepened into the bowels of the earth. Michael and Luke advanced side by side, guided by the luminous crystal and the glowing blue marks that indicated the path. The buffalo followed right behind, its presence comforting in the unsettling darkness of the underground. How does an animal of that size manage to move so easily through these narrow tunnels? Murmured Luke, still getting used to the peculiarities of the mystical world into which he had been thrown. It's not an ordinary animal, replied Michael, instinctively touching his necklace. I think it can adapt somehow. The tunnels occasionally opened into wide caverns of surprising beauty, where multicolored crystals grew from the walls and ceiling, creating a natural illumination that dispensed with their small light source. In some of these spaces, they found evidence of ancient human presence, inscriptions on the walls, simple stone altars, ceremonial artifacts preserved by the dry and isolated environment. After what seemed like hours of walking, they reached an unmarked bifurcation. Both paths seemed identical, without the blue marks that had guided them until then. Now what? Asked Luke, analyzing the two options. Michael closed his eyes, trying to feel the correct direction. The buffalo remained motionless, as if waiting for the young men's decision. Suddenly, the crystal fragment in Luke's backpack began to pulse, emitting a more intense glow that penetrated the fabric. "The crystal!" exclaimed Luke, removing the case. "It's trying to show us something." When he opened the case, the fragment was shining intensely, projecting a beam of bluish light toward the tunnel on the right. "I think we have our answer," concluded Michael. They followed the indicated path, which gradually began to descend in a spiral. The air became more humid, and the distant sound of running water echoed through the rocky walls. Eventually, the tunnel ended abruptly in an impressive underground cavern. The twins stopped, marveled at the spectacle before them. A subterranean lake of crystalline waters occupied most of the cavern, reflecting the light of the crystals that hung from the ceiling like inverted constellations. In the center of the lake rose a small circular island where a miniature temple had been built. A perfect replica, although smaller, of the Temple of Convergences they had seen on the surface. "The submerged temple," whispered Michael. A narrow, stone bridge connected the shore to the island, gracefully serpentining over the calm waters. The brothers advanced cautiously, feeling the energy of the place intensify with each step. The buffalo remained at the entrance, as if standing guard. Upon entering the small temple, they found a surprisingly luminous environment. Light filtered through strategically positioned crystals in the ceiling, converging on a central pedestal, very similar to the one they had seen in the main temple. "This must be where the next fragment is kept," deduced Luke, approaching the pedestal. To his surprise, the pedestal was empty. However, around the base, ancient symbols identical to those on his amulet formed a sequence that resembled a code. "Looks like we arrived late," commented Michael, disappointed. At that moment, the fragment they carried began to pulse with more intensity. Luke placed it on the pedestal, and instantly, the symbols on the base lit up in sequence, emitting a bluish glow. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, and a section of the wall slid to the side, revealing a hidden chamber. The twins exchanged nervous looks before cautiously advancing to the new opening. The secret chamber was a small laboratory, surprisingly modern compared to the ancestral environment of the rest of the temple. Tables with scientific equipment, shelves with books and manuscripts, and a computer that, although turned off, seemed functional, composed the unexpected scenario. "Someone has been working here recently," observed Luke, noticing the absence of dust on the equipment. Michael approached a table where various documents were spread out. Ancient maps with modern annotations, complex chemical formulas and diagrams of the crystal in different configurations. His attention was drawn to a leather-bound notebook, carefully positioned in the center of the table. "Luke," he called with a trembling voice, "I think we should read this." The notebook contained a research diary, written in an elegant calligraphy. The first pages dated from 16 years ago, detailing discoveries about the Guardian crystal and its extraordinary properties. As they advanced in their reading, the realization hit them like lightning. "This diary is our mother's," whispered Luke, recognizing the name Helen Santos signed on the first page. With trembling hands, they continued reading. Helen described how she had discovered the true nature of the crystal, not just a mystical artifact, but a source of natural energy capable of restoring damaged ecosystems and reversing environmental imbalances. She also reported how the Shadow Circle had become interested in her research, initially offering funding and then, upon realizing the crystal's potential for their own ends, trying to force her to collaborate. The most recent entries, however, dated from just 3 months ago. "She's alive," murmured Michael, emotional, "and she was here not long ago." The last entry in the diary was particularly revealing. "The twins will soon reunite. The visions have become more frequent. I can feel them approaching each other through the bond they share. Andrew did what was necessary that night, although it broke his heart. Now I must finish what we started. The third fragment is safe with me. The other 2 are protected by the Guardians. When Michael and Luke gather the first 4 fragments, the path to the remaining 3 will reveal itself. The Shadow Circle is getting closer, but I will not allow them to use the crystal for their destructive purposes. I leave this diary as a guide and proof that I have always been watching, always protecting, even from a distance. My sons, if you are reading this, know that we will soon meet at the place where everything began, The birth clearing, where you came into the world under the aligned stars. Luke swallowed hard, fighting back tears. She never abandoned us. She's been protecting us all along, completed Michael, equally emotional. A subtle noise behind them made them turn quickly. At the entrance of the chamber, a hooded figure was observing them. By instinct, Michael positioned himself in front of his brother in a defensive posture. The figure slowly raised its hands and removed the hood, revealing the face of a middle-aged woman, with dark hair sprinkled with silver strands and intensely blue eyes, the same eyes that the twins shared. "Helen," whispered Michael, recognizing her instantly. "Mother," completed Luke, the word sounding strange and at the same time familiar on his lips. Helen Santos smiled, silent tears running down her face marked by time and experiences. "My sons," she said with a choked voice. "Finally." The moment of hesitation lasted only seconds before the three moved simultaneously, meeting in an embrace that seemed to contain 15 years of absence and longing. They remained like this for a long moment, until Helen gently moved away to look at her sons' faces. "You've grown exactly as I imagined," she commented, touching the face of each one alternately. Michael with the deep connection to nature, Luke with the analytical and questioning mind. "Why didn't you come for us before?" asked Luke, the question escaping before he could contain it. Helen sighed deeply. "It was the most difficult decision of my life, but necessary to protect you. The Shadow Circle never stopped looking for me. If you were with me, you would have been constant targets." "And our father?" questioned Michael. "Theodore said they lost contact with him 3 years ago." A flash of pain crossed Helen's face. "Andrew sacrificed everything to protect you, and the secret of the crystal." Her voice failed momentarily. "He was captured by the Circle while helping me escape. I managed to free him 2 years ago, but he was severely debilitated by the experience. He's recovering in a safe place far from here." "So he's alive too," concluded Luke, feeling an indescribable relief. Helen nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "And eager to see you again when it's safe." The family reunion was interrupted by a distant roar from the buffalo, a clear warning signal. "They found us," said Helen urgently. "The Circle must have followed you here." "How will we escape?" asked Michael. "The passage we came through is the only way." Helen moved quickly through the laboratory, collecting essential items in a backpack. "There is another exit, a tunnel that leads directly to the birth clearing. It's an ancient path, known only to the original Guardians." As she spoke, she pressed a specific sequence of symbols on the opposite wall, revealing a narrow and dark passage. "And the crystal fragment?" remembered Luke. "Bring it," instructed Helen, "and we'll also need this." She opened a hidden compartment under one of the tables, revealing another fragment of the Guardian crystal, slightly larger than the first, pulsing with a greenish light. "The third fragment," murmured Michael, marveled. "Together, these 2 fragments will guide us to the location where the others are hidden," explained Helen, carefully storing the second fragment in a protective case. "But first, we need to get out of here." The sound of footsteps echoing through the main cavern confirmed the approach of intruders. Without further delay, Helen guided her sons through the newly revealed tunnel, closing the passage behind them. The new path was narrower and more irregular, clearly older than the previous tunnels. They advanced rapidly, guided by the light of the crystal fragments that Helen had connected, forming an improvised compass. "And the buffalo?" asked Michael, concerned about the animal that had faithfully accompanied them this far. "Don't worry about him," replied Helen with a mysterious smile. "The forest spirit knows how to take care of itself. It will find us when necessary." After almost an hour of constant walking, they began to feel a fresh breeze and they were approaching the surface. The tunnel ended in a small opening partially covered by roots and vegetation. Helen carefully moved aside the natural cover and peered outside before signaling for them to follow. They emerged in a perfectly circular clearing, surrounded by centennial trees that seemed to bend slightly toward the center of the space, as if in reverence. The sun was setting on the horizon, tinting the sky with orange and purple hues. "The birth clearing," announced Helen. "The place where you came into the world." The twins looked around, feeling a deep and inexplicable connection with that place. In the center of the clearing, a small stone altar had been built, with ancient symbols engraved on its surface. "It was here that we discovered the true nature of the crystal," explained Helen, approaching the altar. "And it was here that the prophecy began to be fulfilled with your birth." She placed the 2 crystal fragments on the altar. Immediately they began to shine intensely, emitting beams of light that intertwined in the air above them, forming an ethereal map. "The path to the remaining fragments," explained Helen, observing the luminous map. 4 locations, 4 guardians, 4 challenges. "And after we gather all of them?" questioned Luke. "The complete crystal must be taken back to the Temple of Convergences," replied Helen. "There, its power will be harmonized, and the balance between the natural world and the human world will be restored. The Shadow Circle will try to stop us," observed Michael. Helen smiled, a smile that mixed determination and confidence. "They will try, but they underestimate the power you two possess together. The separation was necessary for each to develop unique abilities. Now reunited, you are much stronger than you imagine." At that moment, a familiar sound caught the attention of the 3. The great buffalo was emerging from the forest, majestic as always. But it was not alone. Behind it came Claire, John, Mary, Robert, and Helen Miller, all apparently unharmed. "They found a safe path through the valley," explained Helen Santos, not seeming surprised by the group's arrival. "The forest spirit guided them." The twins' adoptive parents approached cautiously, looking with curiosity at the woman who had given birth to the children they had raised. "You must be Helen," said Helen Miller finally, extending her hand. "Thank you for trusting your son to us." "And you are John and Mary," replied Helen Santos, turning to the other couple. "I have no words to express my gratitude for having raised Michael with so much love." A moment of silent understanding passed between the 3 couples, the biological parents and the adoptive ones, all united by love for the twins, who were now reunited. Claire approached the altar, observing the luminous map with interest. "The fragments are calling each other. The journey that began 15 years ago is reaching its crucial moment." On the horizon, the first stars were beginning to appear, shining intensely in the twilight sky. A gentle breeze ran through the clearing, making the leaves of the trees whisper as if in an ancient song. "What happens now?" asked Luke, looking at his biological mother. Helen smiled, placing her hands on her son's shoulders. "Now, my dears, the true journey begins, together as it should have been from the beginning." Michael and Luke exchanged glances, a silent communication that only twins could share. For 15 years they had lived separate lives, growing in different worlds, developing distinct abilities. Now reunited with their biological family, and surrounded by those who had loved and protected them, they were ready to fulfill the destiny for which they had been born. The buffalo approached and slightly inclined its head, as if in approval. The crystal fragments pulsed in synchrony on the altar, their combined lights projecting a glow that illuminated the entire clearing. "Are you ready?" asked Helen, looking at her sons with pride. Michael and Luke nodded simultaneously, their responses simple but loaded with determination. "We were born ready." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. The dirt road cutting through the forest on the outskirts of Judson Falls was deserted on that winter night. The sky, dotted with timid stars, witnessed the most difficult moment in Andrew Fields' life. His uncertain steps left marks on the damp soil as he walked with difficulty, carrying against his chest 2 small bundles that moved gently. "Forgive me, my sons," he whispered, his voice breaking, tears flowing freely down his face marked by fatigue. "I have no choice." The babies, newborn twins, seemed to take turns crying, as if they understood the emotional turmoil that dominated their father. Andrew stopped abruptly in a wider stretch of the road, where the moonlight created a silver circle on the ground. His hands trembled, not only from the cutting cold, but from the weight of the decision he had made. "It's to protect you," he justified, more to himself than to his sons. "They won't rest until they find you. Carefully, Andrew knelt and placed one of the boys on an improvised bed of dry leaves, wrapped in a blue blanket. For a few seconds, he held the other baby more tightly, as if his father's heart was fighting one last battle against the fate he had chosen for his children. "Michael," he murmured to the baby he still held. "Luke," he said to the one already on the ground. Simple names for children who, he knew, carried an extraordinary legacy. When he finally placed the second baby next to his brother, Andrew felt his body falter. He took a few steps back, breathing with difficulty, turned his back and disappeared among the trees, swallowed by the darkness of the forest. The babies were left alone, their cries echoing through the silent forest. Fate, however, had different plans for the brothers separated at birth. A deep sound cut through the silence, followed by the movement of nearby bushes. An imposing buffalo with dark fur emerged slowly from the forest, its amber eyes shining under the moonlight. The animal approached the babies with a tranquility that contrasted with its impressive size. The buffalo examined the children with almost human attention. It leaned over Michael and, with surprising delicacy, pushed him gently with its muzzle before carefully lifting the baby onto its back. It cast one last glance at Luke, who inexplicably stopped crying for a moment and returned to the forest, taking only one of the twins. Hours later, headlights illuminated the road. A retired couple of teachers, Helen and Robert Miller, were returning from visiting relatives when they spotted the small bundle abandoned. "Robert, stop the car!" Helen shouted, pointing to the roadside. "There's something there!" Upon discovering the baby, the couple exchanged confused and concerned looks. Who would be capable of abandoning a child like this? Robert wondered, taking Luke in his arms. "We should take him to the police," Helen suggested, adjusting the blanket around the baby to protect him from the cold. "It's very late, and the nearest police station is miles from here," Robert considered. "Let's take him home tonight and decide what to do tomorrow." What they didn't imagine was that night would completely change the course of their lives. The decision to keep the baby, initially temporary, became permanent after weeks of bureaucracy and the absence of any information about biological parents or relatives. Far away, in the heart of the forest, Michael found a different fate. The buffalo carried him along secret trails to a small clearing where a modest wooden cabin sheltered John and Mary Oliver, a couple who lived in harmony with nature. When they heard the characteristic sound of the buffalo approaching, John and Mary came out to the porch of their cabin. Surprise took over their faces when they saw the baby on the animal's back. "Mary, look!" exclaimed John, running to pick up the child. "It's a miracle!" Mary, who had always dreamed of being a mother, felt tears in her eyes as she took the little one in her arms. "Where did you come from, little one?" The buffalo remained motionless, as if waiting for confirmation that the child would be well, cared for. When Mary hugged the baby against her chest, the animal slowly moved away, disappearing again into the forest. "We've heard stories about the forest guardian," John commented quietly. "They say it chooses those who should be protected." "Let's call him Michael," decided Mary, observing a small wooden necklace in the shape of a buffalo hanging around the baby's neck. That night, two distinct homes welcomed the separated twins. While Luke would grow up in the city, surrounded by material comfort and formal education, Michael would be raised among ancient trees and crystal-clear rivers, learning the secrets of the forest and developing a special connection with nature. What no one could predict was that, despite the distance, an invisible bond would continue to unite the brothers, manifesting through dreams, inexplicable sensations, and coincidences that only time would reveal were not the work of chance. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. 15 years passed since that fateful night on the road. The twins, now teenagers, were leading completely different lives, unaware of each other's existence. Luke Miller grew up in Bellevue Heights in a comfortable apartment in the Savannah neighborhood. A dedicated student at the best private school in the city, he excelled in mathematics and physics Olympics. Despite the love dedicated by his adoptive parents, Helen and Robert, something inside him remained restless, like an unanswered question. "You seem distant today, son," Helen commented while serving breakfast. "Are you worried about the final exams?" Luke sighed, running his hand through his dark hair. "It's not that, Mum. I had that dream again." Helen and Robert exchanged concerned looks. For years, Luke had been reporting the same recurring dream, a dense forest, a large animal he couldn't clearly identify, and a feeling that someone was calling him. "They're just dreams, my son," Robert tried to reassure him. "Maybe we should consult Dr. Carmen again." Luke rolled his eyes, tired of the sessions with the psychologist who tried to explain his dreams through theories about abandonment trauma. "I don't need more therapy. This is different. It seems too real." That same morning, miles away, Michael Oliver woke up in the small cabin where he lived with John and Mary, in Shadow Valley, a preserved region of the ancient forest. The singing of birds and the murmur of the nearby river were his natural alarm. "Clock? Michael, breakfast is ready," Mary called from the rustic kitchen, where she prepared cassava bread in a wood-burning oven. The boy stretched and sat on the edge of the wooden bed. He instinctively touched the buffalo-shaped necklace he never took off. He had dreamed again of the strange boy who had his face. "You had that dream again, didn't you?" John asked, noticing his son's thoughtful expression as he sat at the table. Michael nodded, serving himself a glass of wild fruit juice, more vivid than ever. "It's as if he were trying to tell me something." John and Mary knew this moment would come. They had raised Michael with love and dedication, teaching him to respect and understand nature. From an early age, he demonstrated extraordinary abilities. He could predict weather changes, communicated uniquely with animals, and possessed an intuitive knowledge of the medicinal plants in the region. "I think it's time to tell you the whole—" "Truth," said John, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. "Truth about what?" Michael asked, confused. Mary took a deep breath. "About how you came to us, son. It wasn't by chance." That morning, Michael heard for the first time the complete story of how a majestic buffalo had brought him to the cabin, still a newborn. Although he knew he was adopted, he had never imagined the mystical circumstances that surrounded his arrival. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he questioned, feeling a mixture of fascination and confusion. "We were waiting for the right moment," John explained, "and we believe that moment has come. The dreams are a sign." "A sign of what?" "That it's time for you to meet the sanctuary of the Guardians," Mary replied with an enigmatic smile. Meanwhile, in Bellevue Heights, Luke was facing his own challenges. During physical education class, a severe headache suddenly struck him, making him fall to his knees on the sports court. "Luke, are you okay?" asked the teacher, supporting him. "I felt like something went through me," explained the young man, confused. "It was like a shock." At the exact moment Luke felt that inexplicable pain, miles away, Michael was touching the ancestral stone for the first time, a crystalline monolith located in the center of the sanctuary of the Guardians. The energy discharge that ran through his body upon contact with the stone was so intense that he almost fainted. "Extraordinary," commented Theodore, the elder master of the sanctuary, observing the phenomenon. "The stone has never reacted like this with any apprentice before." Claire, one of the leaders of the place, approached with interest. Tall, with black skin and grey hair, she carried the wisdom of generations. "He is not just a common guardian. He is one of the chosen ones." The sanctuary of the Guardians was hidden among mountains, accessible only by secret trails known to few. It was a place of training for people who, like Michael, possessed special connections with nature. Their ancient knowledge was preserved and transmitted, far from the eyes of the modern world. "What does it mean to be chosen?" Michael asked, still recovering from the intense experience. "It means you were born with a greater purpose," Claire explained. "And that purpose is linked to a balance that few understand." While Michael began his journey of self-discovery at the sanctuary, Luke began to question more intensely his origins. After the episode at school, he convinced his parents to tell him more details about his abandonment. "We only know that you were found alone by the side of that road," Helen explained, showing him the blue blanket he was wrapped in when they found him. "There was no identification, no clue about your biological parents." "And this cord?" Luke asked, holding a small wooden pendant in the shape of half a circle that was kept with the blanket. "It was around your neck," Robert replied. "It seemed broken, as if it were part of something larger." Luke examined the object with curiosity. For some inexplicable reason, He felt that that simple piece of wood was important, a key to unraveling the mystery that surrounded him. That night, both Luke and Michael observed the full moon through their windows. One feeling the emptiness of something he didn't know, the other beginning to understand the magnitude of what he was about to discover. What neither of them imagined was that destiny had already begun to weave the threads that would eventually bring them together, revealing truths that would change their